Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. And we're here every day, 7 days a week, answering your questions. And if you have got questions, you can throw them into Makana. If you're not a Makana, and make sure to vote on them if you're there. If you're not a Makana, of course, you can use our little QR code here, and that is askofficehours.global. And you can use that any time of the day. So even if you're watching this later, you can throw questions in via the QR code. And we'll ask them the next time we pull those in. And so definitely throw those questions in there. Let's go ahead and jump into the questions. CJ, what do we have?
From Douglas Carmichael, I've been using an ear training app, and it's been very helpful in learning to recognize scales, chords, and intervals. How can ear training be useful for audio engineers?
Go ahead, Samuel.
I don't think I answered this one.
I got a problem with my setup here. CJ, sorry.
No worries. So I took a look at that app. It looks really cool. I've used something similar from musictheory.net called Tenuto to help train my ears and help to recognize things. For audio engineers specifically, though, when you're thinking about harmonics and you're thinking about how you're looking at scopes, what's behind music is really math. So understanding how intervals relate to frequencies can help you as you're trying to troubleshoot something in your audio chain, or if you're hearing something in your mix that you don't like, having a little bit of that background, maybe not going to get you to the direct answer, but it is going to help give you more context and probably help you get to that answer faster.
Jeffrey?
Oh, yeah. Doing any type of ear training, you're basically repathing your neural netways, or however people say that, getting things ready because every time you're just constantly doing it. Like a jazz guitarist knows if it's an E7 sharp 11 chord that's going through. I remember back, I think it was 2018, I was watching the sound engineer for America fine tune a room, and he was frustrated because he was trying to get this 3 kilohertz sound out of the sound, and the average person wouldn't have heard that. So it's no different than what Alex has talked about with when you watch Netflix, and if you look at the blocking and you see that, you're never going to unsee that. That's basically the whole idea.
Yes, it's very useful. I think it gets you on the playing field. I mean, what really makes a difference is life experience, working on projects, and knowing what that meant when you were on that project. But it is good to kind of introduce you to some of the sounds that you may hear there. One thing that I would recommend is, one thing that really made a difference for us is we started using scopes. I have to admit that when we started using audio scopes, it was mostly just eye candy. I come in and encode your event, and I have a little box. Like, you give me a video, and I have a laptop where I have this little box and I encode for you. And it's really hard to tell the client I should pay them. They should pay me for that because it's just like a small little thing. So I was like, we have to create something that looks like we're doing something important. Because when we were doing video production, we had a whole couple tables and we had all this stuff. But when we were brought into encode, there wasn't much to show. And so we decided, okay, we're going to put up 6 monitors, and we're going to have some video scopes, and we're going to have some audio scopes and everything else. But it was really just for show. Within a couple shows, we realized I can tell a lot about the show from looking at these scopes, because we were just sitting there all day, you're encoding. We didn't have anything else to do other than look at the scopes. And we started to see, I can see a buzz in the line. I can see this isn't high enough. I can see that there's problems in these areas. And so when you're training your ears, I would recommend training your eyes as well. So if you're playing something out, figure out a way to have scopes where you can look at them, because what you're going to want to be able to do is look at that and know that you should listen for it, or know you oftentimes you can really get a sense of what's happening in the audio signal just by the visual scopes that are going by. And I think Mickey said something about visual scopes as well. Yeah, he relies on visual scopes. And so you want to have your ears know what they're hearing, but you also want to know what that looks like on a scope. Next question.
From Tim Mann in Melbourne, Australia. My M1 Mac is still on Monterey. Do newer OS versions remove the orange dot in the top right?
Samuel.
Yeah, on the newer versions of the Mac operating system, then you have this orange dot up in the corner, and it's actually a security feature. So they want to notify you if your desktop is being captured. And there are ways to get around this, but it's not recommended. So if you really want a professional solution, then what you want to do, you want to get like a deck link or something, and then do in a Sonet box, and then do output there, and then you can get, like, for example, 4 outputs without any dot.
we pushed pretty hard when we first saw this dot. We were a little apoplectic about the whole thing, and pushed pretty hard to see if we could get rid of it or have some way to make it officially go away rather than run a hack. There's a script that you can run to get rid of it, but that does open up a bunch of security issues, as Samuel pointed out. And so I think that we did talk to someone and said, yeah, but you can if you're doing grown-up shows, you should have a grown-up output. I think is what I was told. So anyway, next question.
Next question is from Nigel DeSalle in Austin, Texas, and here on the panel. New iPad Pro coming. Any ideas on the dates for the first Post-Vision Pro announcement?
Nigel?
Yeah, I'm looking to upgrade my iPad Pro this year, and I understand there's a new keyboard. So two things. I think it's going to be in March. I wonder if anyone, and nobody knows. I get that. But trying to plan my way through it. Now, I think the other interesting thing is this is the first real post-Vision Pro announcement. It'll be interesting to see whether that touches it, changes it, or has no impact at all.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what's going to happen with the iPad Pro because eventually there's going to be a point where it's like you have iPad Pro and you have Apple MacBook Air. There's going to be a point where it doesn't make sense to make one or the other, and my guess is the Air would be the thing that would end up going. But because with an M3, if you've got a single USB port and it's not even a Thunderbolt port, what is the where is the iPad Pro going to be directed to? Because I know as a musician, we still cannot use Bluetooth. The latency is still there. And so I need to have something that directly connects, and I'd love to be able to connect a Thunderbolt 4 and do video production through capture cards through that. So lots of different reasons why I'd love to see that happen, but I'm hoping that they're going to give us a little bit more than just the improved screen.
CJ?
The iPad's in a tough spot. The software feels like it is way under what the hardware is capable of doing. So when you put an M2 processor and all that RAM and all that storage, and even with the higher speed USB-Cs and supporting hubs, a little bit of I/O, I'm sitting there thinking, what are they going to do? Because for me, I've got a ton of power here that's really untapped from a hardware perspective. I'm almost looking more forward to what are they going to say at WWDC than anything that they're going to do to the hardware.
Sounds like we may see some better screens. I mean, I think that's one of the things that we're looking at is an improved screen, which is already pretty good. One thing that I've noticed that it'll be interesting to see how quickly this propagates. A handful of videos on TikTok now are coming up as HDR. And I have to say that it takes about 10 videos before everything looks like, so the HDR comes up and it just slowly gets brighter. And then you see this video and then the next 10 look like dirt. Like it's just, like it is. And I think that the number one argument for HDR has become TikTok, because it just pops up on your screen and you see this super bright image and then it goes down and then everything looks gray, after that. And so I think that the move to making the screens better, I think is going to make a difference. I think that most likely we will probably see some Thunderbolt 4, M2 or M3. These are really powerful machines, and I do agree with Jeffrey that there's a lot of overlap in the I don't think they're going to get rid of I think it's going to be a long time before they get rid of the Air, probably another 10 years, and mostly because, there's just a form factor that people like, and I think that there are things that Apple doesn't want to do, which is provide a regular file access the way we have it on a Mac. I think that's the big thing that sets the Mac apart from the iPads is the sandbox, and I think that if you don't want a sandbox, then you need a Mac. And there's a lot of people, though, I think that what Apple's getting really good at is providing people with everything else they need other than that open access on the iPad. And that's really important when you think about your fleet of salespeople or your grandparents or your kids, not having them be able to download things that are going to cause a lot of trouble probably makes sense, and you see those age groups kind of break out in airports. So giving them all the feature sets that they need without, giving them total access to the OS, I think actually makes sense. So, but I think there's still going to be people who want Airs. I wouldn't buy an Air, by the way. I mean, it's only having two and I say this as my wife has an Air that she just got recently, and it was hard for me to push for getting a Pro, but we feel the pain of less USB-Cs every day. You know, so I think that it really, those USB-Cs make a huge difference on the pros. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Nikon axed the production of the P1000, a legendary camera. What's its story and what will replace it?
CJ?
So what Nikon was able to do with the P1000 is that they took a 2/3 inch chip and put a zoom lens on it that went in real focal terms from about 4 millimeters to 540 or something like that. So the equivalent is 24 to 3000. So this really allowed somebody who's an amateur wildlife photographer or somebody who wanted to have a super zoom lens for $1,000 a way in. If you're serious about it, and I'm looking at this just getting ready for the eclipse, if you're serious about it, most of the lenses that you're going to look at that are going to be in the 400, 500, 600 millimeter range are going to be in the 2,000 plus, if not more. I think I saw one last night for $12,000. So I think, it's an interesting camera for someone who's just getting started with wildlife photography. But if you're serious, you're not going to shoot with the 2/3 inch chip.
I think the real challenge for all camera manufacturers right now is that, the reasoning for having a camera that isn't your phone is getting harder and harder and harder. It's not that it doesn't solve those problems, and they do have to find something specific, but I think that market, they have to start getting very efficient about what do they provide, and they probably just weren't getting the numbers, and they probably won't. If they're discontinuing this one, maybe they're putting out another one soon. We've got a couple big shows coming up soon, so maybe they're getting ready for that. But it probably is all coming down to numbers, and the numbers are getting less and less rosy as we keep on moving forward, and as the cameras on both the Android and the iOS side get better. Next question.
From Douglas Carmichael, as I look at the Director Mini in more detail, Magewell doesn't seem to have the ecosystem that the ATEM range has. See MixEffect. To get around the ATEM crush, would you use a Director or an outboard USB encoder connected to the ATEM?
Samuel?
Yeah, the Director Mini, that's kind of like a YOLO box competitor. It's like a small box with a screen, and it's got two HDMI inputs, and you can do two USB inputs. So I don't think that if you want to use ATEM, then I don't think this is kind of overkill for what you need. So what I would do, Magewell has a lot of good capture device products, so I would take a look at them. Or else you could just use like a CamLink, Elgato CamLink. That's what I'm running my ATEM through right now.
Courtney?
Yeah, I agree with Samuel. That would be the cheapest way to go. You could go even cheaper, and there are these, generic Chinese-made HDMI encoders that go HDMI to USB. You get for about $20 out there. The problem with that is, of course, you give up if you've got an ATEM Mini Pro and you're using an external encoder for the USB. You give up one of your crucial HDMI outputs. So either your multi-view or your program out is going to be given up to do this. I like to have the switched output on the ATEM Mini Pro to go to a second monitor so that I can use it to switch between anything that doesn't control the program output. And you lose that capability if you tie up one of your HDMI outputs with an encoder. And haven't they dealt with, maybe Alex, you can correct me if I'm wrong, hasn't Zoom dealt with the ATEM crush and corrected for it?
Yeah, so let's be clear that the ATEM, number one is I wouldn't get a cheap encoder to replace the ATEM encoder. That's probably that's out of the frying pan into the fire. So if you're going to do this, you'd probably want to get a relatively good Magewell or something else that's going to avoid other problems that you're going to have with the compression to H.264. Zoom has figured it out. So Zoom has it all sorted out. So if you're just connecting to Zoom, you don't need to do anything. Remember that the HDMI out of the ATEM is fine. We've just found that there's a black crush in the UVC output from the ATEM. And again, I would get a high quality encoder because there's other problems with the cheaper encoders when it comes to how they manage bandwidth, how they manage color, specifically in pure colors like red. There's a bunch of other things that fall apart, so you're kind of not really solving the problem there. So I think that's those are the things you'd have to think about there. most people won't notice, and while this doesn't fix it for Teams, I don't think anybody using Teams would notice that you have a black crush because the quality of the video on Teams is so low anyway. It doesn't really, it's not going to make any difference. So I think that, I think that it's been largely handled by Zoom. In fact, one of the things that I had to do is that when they handled it, everything looked a little milky. I was so used to it being crushed, and so I went back and crushed it a little bit. Yeah, go ahead, CJ.
And one other note, when you get into some of the nicer USB encoders, like the Magewell has the USB capture 4K, it has the USB encoder, but it also has an HDMI loop through, so you're not quite as hampered by losing your program out.
Next question.
Marielle Shujamira from Woblo says, you said yesterday you only care about using UVC when you can control a camera, so you won't be interested in Director and its UVC connection, but you see UVC connections of the ATEM Mini every day. So why wouldn't the Director be good for this too?
Well, what I meant by that is that I do use UVC from it. I'm saying that when I use a UVC camera, the only cameras that I'm using now, when I do that is the Link 360, the Insta360 links, and that's because I can control them. I can move them around. That's the sell point to me of using a webcam, is that they are relatively inexpensive and they're little PTZs. And so, I wouldn't go through the trouble of connecting a webcam to a switcher. Webcams they're great, but they're not the highest quality camera. And so, so if you're looking for some convenience and some extra features, it makes sense. It doesn't make sense to use them and go through the trouble of putting them through a switcher if you don't have any control over them. So that, because they have so little control on their own. If you can't shade them, if you can't pan, tilt, zoom them, then you might as well just get another camera. And there's lots of used cameras out there that are going to look a lot nicer than a webcam. So if, I wouldn't, so I don't think that the UVC is a big sell for me if I can't control the camera. That means changing the color, changing the brightness, changing potentially the zoom, being able to pan, tilt, zoom. Like if you don't have those controls, then, there's a lot of better options. Next question.
Tim Mann from Melbourne, Australia says, does Allen Heath SLink require shielded cat cables?
Jeffrey?
So up on the Allen and Heath website, they're basically saying that there's two types of cables you want to have: the shielded twisted pair, Cat 5e or higher, Nutrix EtherCon connection. They have a list of approved vendors from there. Can you plug in another cable and use it? Yeah. Do you want to? No, because the shielding is what keeps everything in line, and I wouldn't want to trust having just any random cable plugged in, especially if I'm going more than 10 meters to the stage. So yeah, you would want to have a good shielded cable, and of course with a Nutrix connection. That way, it's not going to pop out.
Next question.
From Ryan Rademan in Chicago, Illinois, what are your thoughts on mic placement for this interview? And he has a link.
Nigel?
So here's how I think it goes. He gets on this camera, whatever it is, with what looks like a 102 or 103. And he says to the person at the other end, how do I look and sound? And the person at the other end said, you look and sound great, Bill. And they're lying to him. He doesn't look great. This is a better angle than when you see him on the thing. He probably doesn't sound great because that mic is probably too far away. But for some reason, people still don't want to have the mic in shot, and this feels like that's too big a distance for that mic, at least from my view.
Jeffrey?
Very interesting. I went through this channel. First of all, that's an audio show that they recorded, and then of course they did a little promo for it with a short. And if you notice in that shot, you see a microphone, but you don't see a camera anywhere. So my guess is that part is being staged, and when they're doing a regular show, they probably have microphones closer. However, he's done some other shows, different situations, and I love the format that they have with these shows, because they really look like the old style 1960s where they had to have a microphone like a couple feet away from the person, and he's using the same microphones. It's about 2.5 to 3 feet away, and they're sitting on chairs for all these interviews. So I wouldn't be surprised if their sound guy is doing something like that, and they're just doing a lot of post processing for the situation. But I wouldn't be surprised if this is not what they're doing for that specific podcast.
Yeah, so here's the shot here. So just so people can see it. So we have the mic up here, so far away for that mic, so far away, especially with the hard surfaces and everything else. And this is obviously, I can tell from this panel down here and the way this is set up there. It's some office. This is an office building. This isn't like he's talking from his home. So they found some kind of, it's either a hotel or a office that they could get access to so that he could sit in it. And they have this open room and they're trying to make it look kind of cozy, like they're just talking, but it's not even like he's coming in from his home. So you can tell that this is totally kind of built up for that. I do see the hint of something that could be an actual shotgun mic, which still I wouldn't put it there. That would still be too far away. If I was having a shotgun mic, I would probably most likely look at the top of the person's head. So just to kind of expand on this a little bit, let's see if we can pull back here a little bit. Let's see. I think there's a shot with him in it. Okay, so where you'd want the shotgun, if I was going to not give him a mic, would be right outside of frame, like right there. And typically I'd point it right at his sternum, like right at the bottom of his sternum. And so that would be kind of where I would typically put it. You could also put the mic right below the frame down here. Just take that mic and turn it sideways and have it go up. That would have been another place to put it, or somewhere over here that's slightly off to the side to make sure it doesn't breathe on it. So those would have been some relatively good options. Yeah, I don't know whether they did this on purpose or not. I can tell you that it's absurdly bad, to put the mic placement there. So, and again, it's also, the other issue that you get into is just it's some marketing person with a lot of money doing a bunch of cool things that they think are cool rather than having the actual just showing the actual conversation. So there's a whole bunch of problems with that specifically. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, it's interesting. Also, it looks like a very live room that Bill is sitting in, and the sound from Sam Altman sounds actually pretty good. So he may have a microphone underslung that's a little closer than the one that's there. And I'm wondering if they just moved that boom out of the way to get this shot to do some of the promo work, and then they moved it back in for the podcast.
I can see
if he's wearing
the camera,
like
if you put that
or something.
It really would be in a completely different place to use that mic. You wouldn't have it from above, I don't think. I think you would have it from.
Maybe it's a podcasting studio that they're not really using it for, and they're just doing a Zoom call, and they put a lav on him or something. And I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you mean for Sam Altman or for Bill Gates?
No, for Bill Gates.
I can tell you, just looking at that wall, that's not a podcasting studio. Because if it was a podcasting studio, that wall would have
better treatment in it. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
or it's podcasting. Or the person who set up this is someone's. This is a conference room or some kind of utility room. I mean, if in a corporate, because you can, again, it's got the way it's set up below, you can kind of see that it's kind of just. They just found a corporate room. I mean, it almost looks like a corporate closet.
Looks like a kitchen in a corporate.
I don't know if it's a kitchen, but it's definitely a corporate. That is like the most standard corporate. That floor, by the way, peels up in sections. Like I've seen that floor before. It's little squares of 2 foot by 2 foot that you can pull up so that you can have a raised floor. So that's definitely a corporate floor. Mm-hmm. Next question.
Mathieu Leconte from Oakland. Thunderbolt 5 this year and new Apple products?
I doubt it. So I think Thunderbolt 5 is probably not going to happen this year. I think they're still working on amortizing Thunderbolt 4. Next question.
Ike Potter in Hanover, Germany. With Polycam in room mode, I scan my basement rooms when processing all my clutters visible. Any undo function in the iPhone or possibility to have both versions?
I don't know how to get rid. I don't know about clutter. Well, if you're in room mode, it should just grab onto it, and it does give you room mode. Will grab the objects that you have there, but it kind of simplifies them. So yeah, it's hard to get rid of that because it puts them in there. Now, of course, you can take that somewhere else. I don't know how it separates those models out. We haven't really tried to. You're not allowed to. I mean, no, not allowed to. You're. It is. Sorry, I was reading. This is why I try not to read the posts while I'm hosting. You'll get a lot of clutter if you use the regular poly mode. But if you're using the room mode, it should simplify your stuff. But there's not really any way to have it just be the room that I know of. There's one called Room Scan, I believe, that will just give you the walls. So that might be what you're looking for. And I don't know of any setting in Polycam that'll get rid of the objects. For me, I found that to be a fairly useful thing, is to have all the objects there. But I can see where you'd want to just show the boxes of the room. And I don't know if there's a setting there, but it sounds like a good request for them to only pay attention to the walls. Next question.
Eric Hers in Hartford, Connecticut. How can I integrate Zoom clips into a workflow to allow users to submit questions via video and have these shown in the SuperSource along with a transcript of the question?
I don't know if I would. I mean, I with any video, what we do. I mean, I guess what I would say is that I don't know as much about Zoom clips specifically, but you're just creating a video from my perspective. So with any video that I'm putting together in a workflow like this, we've done this in the past. It's actually pretty effective. If you go out and call for action, you get people to send you a bunch of questions over video, and then we play them back out. And we just have a play out system like a Hyperdeck or a Softron or QLab or something else that you can queue up. Playout B is perfect for this kind of thing. And so you have them there, and then you call them out. You can get them transcribed relatively easily, and so then you got to decide whether you want to have that burned in by your editor. That's one way to do it. I mean, that'd probably be the easiest way to have it just kind of appear above it. But you have the text there as well, so then it's just a matter of inserting that. I would probably burn if I wanted it to be transcribed, and I'm not transcribing the rest of the show. I'd probably just burn it into the. I'd probably burn it into the video in the way that I like it. Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
So it's all about at that point creating meta clips with all the tags in there. I remember at NAB back in 2015, HP had I think it was called Moonshot. I can't remember exactly, but basically it was a machine that actually could catalog everything like that. And of course, that's on the enterprise level of things. So if you needed to call up a clip, this was meant for TV broadcasters to bring up specific past archive clips. And there's probably a couple other programs and systems out there that do the exact same thing. But this is, of course, going to be a very costly purchase for you to do. So it's probably not what you're looking for. However, it does exist.
Next question.
Next question's from Guy Cochran in Seattle. Is this the ultimate Rode kit? I've got a link to the Studio Node Mini.
Nigel.
I guess it depends on how much money you have and how much space you have to take with you. It's hard for me to know exactly what's in this. First of all, I hate the purple website. I find that very difficult. And it seems to lack specific information. Is this a Blackmagic Micro? Is that what that camera is? So it's really hard to get any of the technical details. But what I do think is interesting is there will be this emerging acceleration of people building smaller and smaller units that really allow you to do this sort of work. The IV is one I know some of the team is working with. But I think over the next 2 or 3 years, you're going to see an emergence of a package of sort of load and go, high quality audio, video. Whether this is the ultimate of that, I can't tell because I can't get enough technical detail to answer that. And there's no price.
Courtney.
Yeah, there is no price. I think it's a Panasonic Lumix box camera, 4K. You can see Lumix on the side of one of the pictures there. If you look at it, they've gathered all this stuff together into one of the Pelican carry-on cases. It's got your Stream Deck. It's got a camera. It's got a 14-inch monitor built into it. The way they picture using it is kind of unusual because they have the camera sitting in front of the monitor that you're using. So they would benefit from a teleprompter or an Interatron setup. It's got SDI out and HDMI out. It runs on a Mac Mini that's inside there. It has I'm not sure the brand, but that's they claim it's a dynamic microphone. It has a Stream Deck 15 input. Like I said, it does encode all of these formats, RTMP, SRT, SMPTE, and RTSP. And it does have a 5 gig modem in it for 5G modem, for transmission. It says it can bond. I looked at the spec sheet for it. It's interesting, and there's one picture up here. Let me see if I can find it. It shows that it has this little stand that it's sitting on. There, you can see it gets it up off the top of the table. I don't know where they put that, and I don't know where they put the microphone and the camera. So there must be two cases that this thing comes in, because they can't fit all of that in that case as it is that has the Mac Mini and everything pre-wired together. And we don't know the price, so it seems to have all the parts, whether it works and what it costs and how long it takes to assemble. And the other nice thing that Alex will like is it can all be remotely operated.
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So this is a company called Future Grade, and they build studios. They build podcasters their ideal area. And I bet you there's a lot of people saying, well, if we had something general, that's what we would use. And so I think this is just an initial offering. There is no price to it simply because of the fact they want you to call them. They want to build it out to your specification, because I don't see this if you're 7 foot tall sitting in a chair, that this system will work better for you than anything. If you're doing something outside rather than inside, I don't think this will be perfect for you. My ultimate kit basically would be the drone flies in, it records you, it does the noise cancellation, and just gets the heck out of there. But this is definitely something that you have to have a learning curve to.
Yeah, I would never use this kit, ever. Just to be clear, so there's a whole bunch of problems with it. The first problem with it is, I built a lot of these kits, and so we think about this a lot. Number one is when you put it in a case, the problem you get into is where you're going to put it. And they put it on a table there, but what happens is the form tends to drive where you put it. You can't figure out exactly what to set it on, and so it never ends up at the right height. The second thing is putting the camera in front of the monitor is really a huge distraction for the folks that are there. It takes a lot of energy out of it. I think Courtney's 100% right that you want to have a teleprompter in there to make that happen, so that you can pull it up. And there's a lot of different ways, but I'd rather have a smaller aperture camera hidden behind the screen than what they're doing here. And I don't usually say that, but putting a huge camera right in front of the monitor, I don't know what they feel like they're looking at. They might as well not even have that monitor there. I think that it is the light right next to the camera is not the light that I would use. I guess you could do a ring light, but really what you want is a light that's up higher and coming down. And then, the kind of mic and where they're putting the mic, I guess they say they have built-in noise reduction and deverb, and they're going to need it, in that setup, in a mic pretty far away from somebody in any room where you can't control it. It's pretty complex. I just don't see, I don't see any reason, unless a client said this is what we're using, there'd be no reason for me to use this kit. And so I think there's still an opportunity to build kits like this and build better kits. I think there's a big business there. I just don't think that they found it yet. Next question.
Eric Hers in Hartford, Connecticut. How does Apple grow revenue now that product sales are slumping?
Nigel.
So I had a quick look at their last quarter, sales up 2%, profit up 16%. So I'm not sure I would quite call that a slump unless you're talking about the growth is not as fast as it was. The reality for Apple is two things to me. One, I don't know any other technical company in the world, technology hardware, that wouldn't swap everything it had for everything Apple had if they could. Apple has the best set of IP and portfolio, probably the most profitable business in the world at doing what it does. Microsoft may be different, but it's mainly a software business. So I think Apple is in a pretty good place. I think it's going to be very hard to replace a product in terms of growth like the iPhone, which is probably the highest selling consumer product of all time. So, you don't find those quickly. And Vision Pro is going to take a number of years, and it's going to take a number of iterations. The reality for Apple is two things. One, the state of the economy this year and what happens in an election year, particularly in the US, and what that means to people making purchases and volume purchases. The second thing is what happens in the rest of the world, particularly China, and how those market drives. But I think if it wants to do something with its products, I think it has to continue the work it's doing cleaning up its product lines. They're still confusing, they're messy, they're getting better. But the only way they're going to really drive additional revenue out of those is product extension strategies that add new capabilities or features that are demanding. Other than that, they just got to stay the course. They're a great business and they'll be fine.
Courtney?
Yeah, I think they make a lot of their money off of basically software sales on the store, where they take their 30% vig of all the stuff that everybody else designs. And they make a lot of money off that and the iPhone, of course. They do have the highest profit margin of about any equipment manufacturer out there. So they've been able to maintain that over all these years because they've been able to maintain their image as a luxury item, top of the market type item. And I think they'll continue to do that. I don't think they're making a lot of money off the Vision Pro. They may make some money off of some high-end vertical market apps that may be developed for it if they're going to take a 30% income off of that. But it's such a small market that I don't think that's really a strong revenue stream for them. But I think they'll continue to grow with more apps in the App Store and more iPhone sales every year because they've conditioned everybody to get a new phone every year, and that drives a lot of their income.
Go, TJ.
It's interesting that if you look at the quarterly revenues, I mean, after February 1st or whatever that report was that came out, they had the second highest revenue quarter they've ever had at almost $120 billion. And the gross profit margin is up from, I think, 35 up over 40 now. So you're looking at in a 5-year period, they have a 10% growth in their profitability on those same revenue dollars, so their bottom line is better. iPhone sales are still growing, despite the fact that that's a very mature market. And if you're going to look at sales or slumping, the only thing that you can really say is that in the middle of COVID, Apple came out with some really, really great M1 or the M series and the Macs and the iPads. And those are 5 to 7 year products before they were the fastest thing you've ever touched before. So I would also say that it's not a slump.
As you can see here in this graph, I mean, this really illustrates the problems that Apple has, which is that they now have all of the top phones. So this is the global share of smartphones being sold right now, and Apple has the first 7. So Apple, as you can see, Apple is having a really hard time managing the phone market. And I think that the fundamental problem is that Apple did something, and I think that they're probably going to be fine for quite some time, because they did something crazy, which is they built this vertical market. I mean, this vertical production pipe and supply chain, which if you're any smaller, you should never do what Apple did. And it's very hard to do what Apple did because you are totally dependent on yourself to produce everything or very large portions of those things to generate revenue. The 30% that people get, by the way, 30% that they get from developers is only for the developers making more than $1 million a year. And that is less than 2% of their developers. And so you're looking at the vast majority, 98% of the developers pay 15% for that. And that number is, in the grand scheme of the services, I don't think they break that out in the services, but we can assume that with all the other services that they're selling to their users, it's probably not a very high number in the grand scheme of what they're doing. It's probably 10 or 15% of their income. The vast majority is still the iPhone. But you can see that Apple has been conscious to the fact that they, that they're going to grow less in hardware, and they've definitely moved more and more towards services. You're seeing services grow every single quarter because they're focused on how do we have people who are using our products pay for something. So the news, Apple TV Plus, the music, all of those things are all part of Apple building a larger ecosystem of people who trust them. So I think that they have a pretty long growth. The other thing is they did something that was incredibly hard. And again, what Apple's gotten good at is doing things that are really hard because it's really difficult for others to follow them. So they're going up trees and going up mountains that no one else can climb, and that creates a lot of that creates a bit of a financial moat for everybody else. And so the M series chips are extremely difficult to build, to design, because you have to control the hardware, you have to control the development environment, you have to control the chip process, and nobody else has that. And so Apple has a lot of opportunity to keep on growing that solution in a way that it's very difficult for Intel and others to do. In addition to that, the headset, if it's successful, is very, very hard to produce, at any price. And so I think that Apple is probably going to be okay. They're probably going to be just fine. We thought that Microsoft was going to end. Now they're bigger than Apple. So Microsoft has shown that they can not really release a lot of new products and continue to just keep on growing the revenue. So there's probably a lot of growth for both of them still left. Next question.
From me in Downingtown, Pennsylvania, I'm interested in renting or investing in a super-telephoto to shoot the eclipse. How should I protect my sensor when shooting at the sun?
Jeffrey?
Well, if you're renting, the one thing that you really want to do, and you really want to do is get it as soon as possible because it's coming up very quick. But you want to talk to the rental house and say, hey, this is the camera I'm going to be shooting with. This is what I'm going to be doing. And they're more than willing to upsell more rental gear for you to make sure that your camera is well protected with the proper solar lenses.
Go ahead, CJ.
I'm probably going to take my 6D Mark II out, and just doing a little research online, it looked like to get the shot that I want to get, I'm going to need something in the 400 to 600 millimeter range to get that close, to get the corona, to get a really good shot of the sun. But then I was talking to Nigel a little bit in the pre-show. You look online at how to protect it, and do I get just a crazy ND filter? Or when 2016, I think all I had was my iPhone, because I wasn't planning on shooting it, and I ended up taking the little cheap plastic piece and putting it over my phone camera and pointing it at the sky. And I got some cool pictures, but I want a really nice picture.
Go ahead, Courtney.
I wouldn't worry too much about protecting the sensor against damage, because if you got that long a lens, it's going to be a pretty tight f-stop. It's going to be 4.5 or 5.6 at its widest. And you're going to be spreading the image of the sun over a much larger area of the sensor. Where you got to worry about is a super wide angle lens when you're shooting the sun, where it's focusing the sun down onto a micro point, like taking a magnifying glass and chasing ants with them. Not that you would do that. It can create a fire. But if you're spreading the image over a broader area, I don't think you're going to have to worry about damaging the sensor. Plus, to get exposure, you're going to have to be limiting the amount of light that's hitting that sensor to begin with. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. I'd worry about trying to get the exposure and variable because, you have to account for it's very bright until it's in totality. And then you want to open it up and get as much light in there as you can so that you can see that corona and get it exposed. So you might take that into consideration when you're choosing that long lens. Does it have, I'm not sure how much light is coming off that corona when you're in totality, if you're in the total area, total eclipse. So you might want to have something a little faster, a little less long.
Yeah, and there's some filters that you can put on the front of them as well. This is the one that I got here. This was suggested by someone else in our group, and so this is. But there's also Celestron makes one here, the Eclipse Smart, that you can throw onto things, and so these are filters that you can throw onto the front of your lenses that will help you be able to do that. And I'm probably going to get experimenting with a couple of them. so those are, but those are the kinds of options that you may want to look at. Next question.
Next question is from Eric Hers in Hartford, Connecticut. If I use Dante AV cameras rather than NDI, does that mean that I could put all of my cameras and mics on one multicast VLAN?
Samuel?
Yes, you can. I was just looking at the AutoNet website for the training, and it says that it uses the same clock for both audio and video. But if you're going to use video, then you for sure have to make sure that you have enough bandwidth on your network, because that can be a challenge, because the Dante AV video, which isn't so very common yet, it has a quite high bandwidth. So you probably have to calculate the bandwidth, and you don't want to use a 1 gigabit network at least.
Next question.
Next question is from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. What is the sweetest deal for a Synology NAS or NAS in general?
The sweetest deal? I wonder if they ship them with. I mean, the sweetest deal is to buy them from Sweetwater, because they'll send you candy. Candy comes in, and there's so you get a Tootsie Roll, a bit of honey, Smarties. Typically, Smarties, Tootsie Rolls, and a bit of honey. And there's a couple. Oh, and there's you get butterscotch. There's like 6 of them. Butterscotch. I don't remember the rest of them. But I will tell you, they took the Tootsie Roll out. They put something else in instead of the Tootsie Roll. And I pinged them and I said, hey, this is not a replacement for the Tootsie Roll. Like, I really liked whatever they sent me. It was like a mixer or something like that. I said, but I told Robert, who's my rep at Sweetwater, I was like, but this is not, it's not a replacement for the Tootsie Roll. And the next time I ordered, this is how good Sweetwater is. The next time I ordered, all I got are Tootsie Rolls. They just sent me a bag of Tootsie Rolls. So anyway, but that's a pretty sweet way to get your NAS is to order it from Sweetwater. Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
So, candy aside, I think that well, the best deal is basically what you need. Are you looking for a 2-bay NAS? Are you looking for a 4-bay NAS? Are you looking for something with expansion to it? For me, Synology is a nice NAS system, but I use TrueNAS because then I can build my own, and that way, if I need to expand anything, I can do that on the fly, whether it be memory, whether it be hard drives, or anything like that. I talked to Synology at CES. They got some new offerings coming out. One of them's called the B Station, which is just basically a single drive that you take and you send it to your mom. She hooks it up, and then she has a cloud right on her desktop, and of course using the Synology app and everything like that. So that's perfect for her. So saying deals for this. We don't know the parameters. We need more of that before we can say, yeah, go for this or go for that.
Courtney?
Look on Amazon. The 2-bays currently are going for about $295, and I don't know and you can they have all of the multi-bays on there, 4-bays. Let's see how much that one costs. They don't have a price on it. Let's see. Not available now, I guess. But they're pretty, $200 to $300 for a 2-bay, $200 to $400 for a 2-bay or 4-bay or 3-bay. And you can get, for spinning 3.5-inch drives, you can get some 6 terabytes or 10 terabyte drives and stick them in there, and that'll probably be plenty of storage for you. So you can go that route. Just get the empty box without drives and populate it yourself. You may have some 2 or 4 terabyte old drives hanging around, old media drives. You might put them into service.
CJ?
I'd encourage you also to be forward thinking about your storage solution because you're going to want to expand. You're going to run out of space. And if you think you need a 2-bay, get a 4-bay. If you think you need a 4-bay, go bigger. I'm a big fan actually of the 5-bay enclosure because it allows me to have 2 RAID pairs with redundancy in them. And then I have one that's kind of like that's my transit drive. If I run out of space on one or I'm trying to move something from one to the other short term, I have kind of an out. And the other thing about the 5-bays is that you can extend them. So the 5-bay is $700, but then for $469, you can get a 5-bay expansion, the DX517. So you can start with a 5-bay, but without having to redo your entire primary unit, you can eventually expand up to 16.
Go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, I was going to vote for the 5-bay for exactly the same reason CJ talked about. The other thing I was going to say is you can get all sorts of storage and cache offerings for this thing, and you can load it up, but really make sure you need and can benefit and need that throughput. Otherwise, you're putting very expensive silicon in a box you're really not going to see the benefit for if all you're really doing is backing up.
All right. It's a short day today. We're going to go back to our Saturday. A reminder that we will have a show at 9 o'clock, or not a show, but if you're interested in being a new panelist, we'll go ahead and put the announcement out a little later. But if you're interested in being a new panelist, if you want to find out what this is all about, you can come in and check that out. Saturday's usually a good day for you to jump on for that. So anyway, so we'll be talking about that. That's the intro to new panelists is at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So that's going to be coming up in a little over an hour. And if you are, otherwise, Sunday is coming. Tomorrow, turns out. And that's our introspection day. If you have questions about office hours or suggestions or complaints or other things you want to discuss, Sunday's the day to do it. You'll find that we push them off during the week. We'd like to keep the week kind of focused on the technical questions. But if you have other more philosophical questions, and especially ones about office hours particularly, Sunday is the day to do that. Thank you to all of our producers out there asking questions, keeping this thing rolling forward. Thanks to the panelists. Can't do this without you. And it was great to see all of you here on a Saturday morning. I hope to see you here tomorrow on Sunday, hanging out with me. And thank you to the incredible crew that gets up every single day, 7 days a week, for the last almost 4 years. This is we'll hit our 4-year anniversary in about 3 weeks. So we're very, very close. 4 years we've been doing this. We haven't missed a day. And we can't do that without the incredible team on the back end, doing the development, doing the software, doing the management, doing all the other bits and pieces. So thank you for your contribution. All right, we traveled. How many days did we travel here? I have so many monitors now on my desk. I have to find my mouse. We traveled 42,000 miles today. That's 68,000 kilometers, and that is 334 million bananas for scale. All right, let's go ahead and jump into after hours.
The bananas made it to Norway. Yeah.
Bananas. So many bananas.
Fake
They
one.
have real bananas.
That looks like a real banana. Is that a real banana?
It's actually a fake one.
Oh, okay.
Just looks real.
It's a very realistic
They
looking
spent money
fake
on the
banana.
paint and went through a couple passes.
Yeah. I've been doing this presentation, and so I keep on reordering all my monitors. I got two iPads here and to this thing, touchscreen here, and now I have to remember where everything is. It's going to take me about a week to settle.
Do you have presets for that router you have there?
I don't have presets for it, but
You should be able to fire it in different modes so that they all just go whoosh.
I'm trying to not have it different modes. I'm just trying to know where,
Okay.
I kind of have it like this is the way the system works. And the hardest part is the presentation itself is like, take